Well, hello, we're back, episode 3, and we are talking about the siddhis. And here in episode 3, we're going to talk about the psychic siddhis and modern mystical gifts. So we have a lot of modern, present day siddhi-like gifts: intuition, clairvoyance, energy healing, and channeling. And so in this episode, Julie and I are going to explain how these ancient siddhis mirror our modern psychic experiences and what it means to live with these gifts in today's world. So, Julie, where shall we start with that?
Wow, that's quite let me think.
I know. It's a big one. I mean, there's the clairsenses, there's so much energy around being psychic, being a medium, reading cards. There's a ton of transcendental meditation experiences out there. People are working with shamanic traditions and plant medicines and out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences. I mean, there's so much in our modern day that could be classified as siddhi-like.
Yes. I'll tell you what's coming up as we're speaking about all of this, and that is the importance of valuing and honoring those gifts and not rushing to hang a shingle up and try and sell them before they're fully kind of matured. And there's a lot of master yogis really speak very sternly about this, about, making sure that you honor those gifts and you cultivate them, you do your inner work before you start kind of exhibiting them or trying to sell them or to share them prematurely. I mean, I remember a story about, again, Bhagavan Nityananda. He took a stick and he beat one of the trainee monks that was working with him because the monk made a show of these supernatural powers, some of the psychic phenomenon, and he was kind of showing off. And Bhagavan Nityananda was very angry with him, and he beat him with a stick. And he said, "You shouldn't make a show of these powers, and they should only be used to uplift and to help others, rather than just purely for monetary gain." And certainly one of the things, and I've spoken about this quite at length, one of the things I've seen on social media is this big sort of proliferation of sales and marketing around Kundalini and promises of courses and programs where someone can have their Kundalini awakened in a day's course or a 2-day course or whatever. And I've also seen a lot of performative supposed Kundalini awakenings being recorded and shown online. And that's really a big no-no. With respect to master yogis, they would never make a public show of that kind of sacred initiation, because they know the importance of what is happening and the impact it has on that person's life. So I've certainly, I've seen a lot of that, and as you have, we've had conversations about it. And I would really say that it's much better if you have these gifts that start to awaken and start to blossom and come alive. Then I would be very kind of careful with how you share them and who you speak to about them, and just utilize them when you can help someone, rather than, rushing to set up shop and sell them and, you know what I mean, market them.
Yeah. Well, and I think, that code of ethics with it, I have seen, believe it or not, this has happened to me multiple times in my life, where I have had somebody walk up to me in the grocery store, and it's always at the grocery store, telling me that there's something I need to know and that they're a psychic, and giving me a card. And there's nothing that makes my skin crawl more than that. And just like you shared, Julie, we want to give permission to receive an initiation. The same is true for psychic and intuitive information. It's so important. And it's tricky in present day because it is something that we offer, right? You and I both offer intuitive information to clients. And it's really, really important to me that when you book the appointment, to me, that is giving permission. You're booking the appointment, you're putting it down, you're committing that you want the information. And again, we talk about it in this session, and you're giving that permission. And I remember years ago, Julie, when I was working with you, you asked me to create an intention statement, and that's always stuck with me too. Creating an opening. I'm choosing to create an opening at this time to have this information given to me. So I just think if somebody is soliciting psychic information, and I'll be very honest with everyone, I've gone around and around with myself. I hate promoting my work. And I've had to really do a lot of research and come to my own evolution of how I want to share, so that my social media posts and my emails are uplifting and content driven. And it's so challenging because you're still running a business and all those things. And so there's a real fine line. But like you're saying, Julie, there's a code of ethics. You never want to offer intuitive information, because I remember a Rinpoche in Boulder talking about the Heart Sutra, and that they call it the Heart Attack Sutra, because the Heart Sutra means there's nothing, like the idea that there's really nothing. And so they call it the Heart Attack Sutra because when you practice that mantra and come to understand that there's nothing, people can have heart attacks. But it's the same is true with these powers and these ability to give information. If you share information that someone isn't ready for, or wasn't asking for, it can be life altering in a negative way for someone. So it's so important to be responsible with the information. And even in this session, I have to ask sometimes my spirit guides, like, should I share this information or not? Is it even the right thing? Can this person even hear this information? It's very tricky, I feel.
Yes. Well, it is. So I think in response to everything we've shared here, I just want to say, I became aware of psychic gifts from, I was probably 3 or 4. I assumed everybody was like that, right? And then it got older and realized, well, actually, no, that's not the case. Then I had a radical awakening in 1989. And in 2007, so you can do the math, that's a chunk of time, right? 1989, 2007. 2007, I had a lucid dream, and one of the great master yogis, a Siddha, came to me in the dream, and she said, will you do this work? You will be misunderstood and accused of many things. And she didn't elaborate, but I knew exactly what she was speaking to. She was speaking to asking me to, offer readings or offer spiritual guidance and all the things that I currently do. But I didn't, have this idea, let me start making a bit more money on the side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was really reluctant. And then I came out of the dreams like, how am I supposed to even do that? How do I do that? What does that even look like? I don't know what I'm doing. All of those things, all of those. And the same was true with the book, the first book. Another great being came in a lucid dream and said, when are you writing the book? So all of this, everything that I'm offering is coming from this place of wanting to serve humanity. And the thing as well, I know you and I have talked about this and we've struggled with putting a price point on what we're offering. Mm-hmm. But the thing that master yogis say is that it's very important to have an exchange, because if there isn't an exchange, there's no value placed on what is being given. And I can speak to that because I used to do so many sessions for free, or I'd do an exchange or whatever, right? And people they just don't work. They don't work with the energy of it, and they don't value it. And so you're kind of wasting your time. So I think it's all fine. It's all good. to, if you feel inspired, to go to someone to get some support, with energy work or reading or whatever. But just be very careful about who you're going to. And, I would look and see how long that person, if you can find that information out, what is that person's background? What is their story? What is their training or whatever, before you hand any money over. Because there's a lot of kind of smoke and mirrors, very great advertising and marketing and all of those things and promises of whatever, that you can be given an Akashic reading or whatever it is. But, as we know, many of those people that are offering these services are just going on to ChatGPT and generating a whole bunch of information and then selling it.
Yeah.
So, it's becoming increasingly difficult to navigate all of this. But you really have to, again, what I would say as well for people is trust your inner guidance, trust the resonance you feel when you're in that person's company, or even when you're reading about them online, or you read their book or whatever. That will give you a clear indication of whether they're authentic or whether they've just hung up a shingle and, are going to try and run with it for a few months, make a bit of extra cash, and then say bye-bye.
Yeah, and there's so much I want to say on this subject. So I'll start by saying, I think, too, it's important to point out that that's part of why Julie and I have written books and created courses, because we both understand that each individual has the ability to access their own information, and it's become our purpose, and I'm speaking for you, Julie, but I think it's true that it's become our purpose to support you in your own awakenings and your own discovery of your own siddhis, of your own intuitive gifts and talents, because you have them. And I also want to say, if you feel called, it was June 2006. It'll be 20 years in June, Julie, that I've been doing this work. And I, just like any other person, I felt called to start reading other people. And the thing is, if I hadn't have put myself out there to read people, a couple of things wouldn't have happened. So what happened because I read people? Well, number one, even to this day, there's a theme. Every week there's a theme. It doesn't matter if I do 2 readings or 10 or 0. There's always a theme. And by the end of the week, it's like, okay, Spirit, I hear you. I've told 10 people the same thing, and it's what I need to hear. So I think the theme of, you're reading yourself, ultimately. You're attracting your own self, and you're reading that. So I came to understand pretty early on that I was actually learning how to heal myself through supporting other people. Because when you share from a neutral place, that information becomes so profound. And I take notes. I have my journal right here. I take notes after every single session I do because I'm learning something every time. So I think it's important, if you want to get out there and do it, do it. And I also think if I hadn't have gone out there and done it, I also wouldn't have come to a place of understanding why it's so important to get your own information. And so are readings wrong? No, they're great. Give someone a reading, receive a reading. But just like Julie said, also look at who's out there doing it. Because I've noticed for myself, as much as I can't believe it's been 20 years, I've been doing this 20 years. Yeah. I have my own understanding of what my cards are saying, what you're going through. I thought I knew it all. In 2006, I was like, oh, that's a horrible relationship. Get out of that, Well, guess what? After divorce and miscarriage and life changes and experiences, I have a very different conversation today than I did back then. So just know that it's fun to try new people. It's also important to keep in mind what they're saying and where you're getting the energy. And thank you, Deb. I don't know which one of us you're talking about, but Julie and I both have lots of books, so I'm glad you have some of them. And then the other thing I just want to say, Julie, and then I'm going to kick it back to you, is this idea of the spontaneous radical awakenings. I feel that can happen from reading Julie's books, and maybe reading my books. And I think that is where you want your attention to be, is less on, I mean, listen, I have courses on how to read cards. I want you to learn how to read tarot cards. And I think that the awakening that comes from the shadow work, and maybe you do open up a tarot deck and you have a dream about it and it opens you up, like, that's the awakening is what you want from the work, more so than information. Because if it's a good psychic, they're going to tell you what you're creating.
Yes.
And it won't be like shock. There's no shock. People come for the first time, don't they, Julie? And they're like, oh my God, what are you going to say? And it's like, it should never be shocking if it's a good psychic. And it shouldn't be shocking if you're aware of what you're creating, if you're conscious.
Yes, exactly. I mean, sometimes it's like shock, but it's more that they're kind of shocked that you're seeing and articulating what they know to be true, or haven't necessarily wanted to look at, because sometimes there can be a few tears and all of those things. But, one of the things I do want to kind of cycle back to is what you were saying about, you writing notes when you do sessions, and there's as much a revelation for you as the person that you're reading and working with. It's a two-way street. There's this tremendous, for want of a better word, the same word, the transmission that happens. And so, of course, you're kind of moving and expanding and growing and seeing your own life in a more kind of expansive way via the work that you're doing with the client. And it's mutually beneficial. And it took me a while to see that. And also I would, reiterate what you said about seeing patterns and seeing, oh my gosh, I'm being shown something here too. And I need to just look at that. And so there's this tremendous give and take. There's a gift there that will continually keep showing up and growing and highlighting what needs to be looked at. And it's just incredible. But I think if you jump into doing that too soon, you're creating problems for yourself, and you're certainly not helping the person you're supposed to be, giving clarity to.
The hardest part is never doing a reading or gaining access to the information. I think the hard part is navigating when you have matching patterns, or when you're filtering through your own shadow. That's when it's like, oof, like, I don't even know if I can do this session because it's triggering me or it's bringing stuff up, which is why it's so important to do the shadow work. I have become such a better, more supportive, neutral reader, if you want to call me a reader, I guess, than I ever was because of shadow work, because I have compassion that I didn't have before. I mean, that's what the shadow work does. It puts you into compassion. And suddenly, even if I haven't had the experience that someone has had, I understand that there's a different way of navigating the information, because you can get information, but it's really difficult to tell somebody difficult information.
Yes. Yes. Well, one of the things that I was taught very early on when I was asked to do the work is to make sure I don't filter, soften, or try and navigate around what I'm being told. I have to deliver that information word for word, even if it sounds kind of weird. And, one of the funny memories I have of actually doing work with a doctor of psychiatry who, I was stunned when she sent me a message saying that she wanted to set up a session. I was like, why is she? And that was the first of many. But anyway, the first kind of download I got with respect to, what I was going to share with her was seeing that she did not even remotely look close to her age. And she had this full mop of hair, thick, wavy hair.
Oh, wow.
And so that one of the initial messages was, everybody thinks that you look a lot younger because you have so much hair on your head. And that was the information I was given and told to share directly with her. And I looked, and I was just checking her date of birth to make sure I'd got it right. And was I seeing it right? Anyway, when I opened up the session and had that conversation, she just burst out laughing. She was rolling around on the chair. She couldn't believe it. And she said, everybody tells me that. And, you know, she was a lot older than she looked because she had this massive head of hair. But if I'd questioned that, doubted that, tried to diminish it, or think, no, I'm getting that wrong, move on, it would have impacted the reading because, of course, because the initial information was so direct and so personal to her, she just kind of went with it, and we had the most amazing conversation. And yeah, that's happened many, many times. And I know that's happened for you as well, Lisa.
Yeah, it makes me think of my bread box story, which I know I've told on this channel. So forgive me if somebody's heard it already. But I remember I didn't used to say I was a medium. I used to, not a thing I put out there, and wasn't comfortable saying that I saw beings or anything. And I remember I was doing a reading for somebody, and they asked if I could talk to, it was a couple, and they asked if I could talk to the husband's mother, and that she had just passed away. And I remember seeing this bread machine in my clairvoyant, like a clairvoyant vision of this bread machine. And I thought, I am not talking about a bread machine. I mean, that just seems so like not the right. So I'm like tap dancing around it with other information. And I felt like I was being very generic. And I was like, I think I probably need to talk about this bread machine. So I said, is there something about a bread machine? And I remember the wife, it was her mother-in-law that had passed. So it was the wife. And she just burst into tears. And she was like, oh my God, she bought us this bread machine and we never used it. And it was like a sticking point. And after she had passed, they started using the bread machine. And it was like this big deal. And that moment was such a great lesson for me, because that was when I was like, okay, no matter how weird it is, I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it. And even today, I had a client in my office earlier today, and I was like, why is your dad talking about breakfast? And she's like, oh my God, I just made breakfast for dinner and did all these things. And so it's such a cool thing. And I want to talk about the humility, because I think that's part of bringing the modern day into the cities, because these supernatural powers can be, just like you started off this episode, Julie, talking about using them in not good ways and what Nityananda did about that. And I just think people ask me how off, like, what's my accuracy? And I always laugh, because I'm like, when I'm wrong, I'm like really wrong, like really bad wrong. And I laugh about it because it's a humility thing. Like, I know that spirit does that sometimes to keep me in check.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I rarely, I think, have an ego about it, but I will say, like, there's definitely times where it's like, oh, I was right about this. No, I'm right about that. And then something will happen. You're like, oh man. Yep. And so it's really, I think that keeps the humility when you stay open too, because that's when the really good, clear, and I think concise information comes through, when you're just curious. And in that place of humility of like, I have no idea what's going to happen today. It's just going to show up. And that's the best way to approach a reading, I think.
Yes. I mean, I always start by saying, I have my puja, my altar space, and I go and I do puja, say my prayers, my mantras. I say, especially when I'm working with a client, I have no clue about this person. I don't know what to say. You have to put the words in my mouth. And my prayer is that I deliver them exactly word for word as you want them said. And that's always how I work, because, you know, I mean, I've had many times and cases where after a reading, I've had somebody question, you know, and then say, oh, you probably found that information on Google. You must have Googled me. And then they say, oh, but wait, that information isn't available online. So, but I can't, you know, I can't take credit for any of it. It's given, it's heard, and it's passed on, and that's the beginning and the end of it.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, you get into trouble when you start claiming ownership of it and taking credit for it, and saying, I am the one doing this, because I'm the first person to say, I don't know how any of this works. I don't know why I've been a lucid dreamer since I was a kid. I don't know why I would have been given Shaktipat awakening in a lucid dream. The mind could never figure any of that out, right? It just isn't. It just isn't possible. And so I think having a childlike kind of attitude towards all these things, and wonder and excitement, and being open and willing to learn, and realizing that truly we don't know anything. I mean, that's the best response you could ever have, because we don't. We think we're in trouble when we think we've got everything figured out.
Well, yeah, and I think it's interesting with the mediumship, and then we're going to shift to our next episode. But I think I say that all the time. Like, I have no idea how this works or why I have this connection, or I really don't know. Like, why are they even talking at all? Like, what are they doing? I don't know. None of us know, really. Until we're there, we're not going to know. And I think, it's important, because I love the intellectual side of it. So I think, learning the different dimensions and learning the planes of existence and learning all these things, it's worth it. It frames some of it for you. And just like you're saying, Julie, stay open.
Yes.
Because is that really how it is? There's no linear. I mean, it's just like saying a past life regression. I can't even put that on my website anymore, because it's like there's no such thing as a past life. Like, is it all happening at once? And are there there's no time. So I just think, it's good to know information, but then it's also good to stay open and move past the information that because there's so much out there. And that's where the Siddhis, to me, comes to life. Because when you can shift out of the intellectual mind and into that space of this etheric, supernatural, anything could happen. I remember, you and I had just had a session together. It was like, I don't know, it was probably 2008 or something, 2008, 2009. I was walking on my trail, and we had just gotten off the phone. And all of a sudden I saw something behind me. Someone was walking behind me, and I looked behind, and I caught just a glimpse, and I knew that it was Nityananda, all in white, walking behind me on my trail. Well, that's a supernatural experience, and it's unexplainable. And why he was doing it to this day, we'll never know. But I knew that was happening. And so I just think if we stay open to the mystical appears to us. So learn the information and stay open to all the impossible possibilities.
Yes.
All right, we're going to come right back, and we're going to talk about some of the dangers and the risks, but we're really just getting into it. We still have 3 more episodes. We're going to talk about witches and all sorts of cool things. So I hope you come back. And Michelle, hi, welcome in. I hope you join us right back here. So we're going to leave. We're going to be right back, and we're going to talk about some of the dangers and the risks. We've already touched on them a little bit, so we're going to expand on that. So we'll see you guys back here shortly.